Scott McCrea here. Hey, that reminds me, who am I pointing at? I always do this. Scott McCrea here, talking about his new book, or my new book rather, with Paul L. Thompson, Gunfighter's Grave, already climbing to the top of the charts. And thanks to the magic of technology, I've been getting a lot of questions about Gunfighter's Grave. So I'm opening up this forum to take some questions electronically. So the first one is, what inspired Gunfighter's Grave? Well, Gunfighter's Grave is interesting in that it wasn't really inspired as much as it was created. Paul L. Thompson, one of the best writers in the Western business, actually called me one day and said that he was enjoying the Flint novels a great deal, and I've been a longtime fan of the Shorty Thompson novels, and he said, Thompson and Flint are so different, we'd probably have a lot of fun if we worked together on a book, bringing the both of them together. And that was the genesis of Gunfighter's Grave. Let's see, what else do we have here? My next question is, what made you want to work together on an Ezra Flint adventure? Well, so Shorty Thompson is very different from Ezra Flint in every way. Shorty is a warmer, more humane guy, and Flint is, well, rather flinty, actually, and a little remote and rather professorial. Paul thought that they would actually work very well together in a story, and it was him that brought the two of them together, and that's how we ended up with Gunfighter's Grave. Now, what else do we have here? What can readers expect from this latest Ezra Flint adventure? Well, it's a very human story, because both Shorty and Flint are very close to this young woman named Clara, who they both think of as either a niece or a kid sister. And they're very alarmed when she comes back with a young man that she's married after selling everything that her father left her. And they're convinced that this young man is Billy the Kid. So what do you do when someone you love is themselves in love with a very bad person? So it's a moral dilemma as well as a Western adventure. So that's why, or how rather, Gunfighter's Grave is, unlike most Westerns today. So I would give it a shot. So what else do we have here? How does this story differ from previous books in the series? Gunfighter's Grave is different from some of the other books in the Ezra Flint series because in most of them, Ezra is sort of like this isolated phenomena, this larger-than-life figure that seems to have come from nowhere or have come from everywhere because he seems to be rather universal in his abilities and his intellect. And this actually grounds him as being an almost paternal figure because he has very deep feelings for Clara, who is like a niece to him, the same way Clara is like a niece to Shorty. Of course, both Shorty and Flint react to familiar relations in different ways, and part of that is what makes it so interesting because they're such interesting guys. And then finally, what do we have here? What do you hope readers notice most about this partnership and the final story? What I hope readers notice the most about the partnership between Shorty Thompson and Ezra Flint is that they're both human, but in very different ways. Shorty, I think, is a more intuitive man and a warmer man, but that doesn't make him a less deep man. And Flint is rather chilly and maybe a little aloof and a little remote. But that does not mean that he's also not human and vulnerable in his own way. So having a young woman that they both happen to love, like family, in danger, in fact, in the ultimate danger because she's in love with someone they're convinced is a very bad and very dangerous man, not only puts him on their guard, but sets him into action. We had a great time writing this book, and we actually think it's among the strongest books that either of us have ever written. And I'd love to work with Paul Thompson again. I hope Paul Thompson would love to work with me again. This book is doing very well. Again, Gunfighter's Grave. It is Marshal Ezra Flint, Marshal Shorty Thompson, Billy the Kid, with also appearances by Pat Garrett and Dave Rudabaugh. So if you're a Western fan, a Western historian, like straight novels, like Western adventure novels, you could not do better than Gunfighter's Grave by Paul L. Thompson and yours truly, Scott McCrea. So I think that is all the questions for now. So this is Scott McCrea saying sun setting in the west,